What it refers to is there's a dog that should have barked because there was a stranger in the house, but the dog did not bark because it wasn't a stranger, and that's the clue. And what that means in relocation management, what it means to me is that you always have to think about what should happen next, and is that truly happening? Is this something that we've planned for? Is this something that we know about? A simple example would be, do we know where the transferee is going to sleep tonight once they arrive? And if the answer is we don't know, that's not good, because chances are the transferee hasn't thought about it or has assumed that somebody will take care of it and calls in the middle of the night after a 10-hour drive to say, I don't know where I'm going to sleep tonight. And you don't want that. So the other thing I always say is relocation management is really about risk mitigation. Everything else comes secondary. So the customer satisfaction, which is such a big deal and being measured, revenue, versus cost, all these things come secondary to me. What's most important is you want to avoid something bad happen. Because why? It impacts customer satisfaction and it, of course, impacts cost. So you better make sure that
so you know it's going to happen. It's just a matter of preventing it.
Yeah, it's prevention. That's another way of looking at it. If you call it risk mitigation, though, you also have the probability element in there, right? How likely is it that this is going to happen? Because there's also a time factor. You can't overanalyze project management in relocation because typically you don't have the time for it. So you do have to factor in probability. How probable is it that something bad's going to happen? And you mitigate what you can, but there's always, in relocation, there's always things that will happen, and there's always things that will go wrong. But you can work with the probability. You can see that you make it less probable that this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Or you can prevent by making sure you understand where that transferee is going to sleep tonight.
So this is very interesting. We're going to be joined now by two. Here's Ron Cooper
Hi, Ron.
and Ken Lloyd.
Hey.
Ron Cooper is in the Washington, D.C. and Maryland area. Meet Christian TerNedden. He's in Irvine, California.
Christian and I are longtime friends. Hey, Christian,
that's right.
Good to be back with you, buddy.
Good to see you again, Ron.
Good to be with you, man.
All right. Welcome into the global meeting room. We've begun recording. I was doing a self-introduction, letting the customers out there who would watch this thing about what's coming, and then all of a sudden Christian shows up. So here we are, we're recording live, and here is downtown San Diego again, for those who that's Broadway, and I shot that picture recently from the Embarcadero at the harbor where the cruise ships come in. Well, we're talking about risk management and business assignments and risk management and knowing what can go wrong and then planning in advance to mitigate it or avoid it. Or Ron, how would you characterize this phrase, risk management, knowing that something's going to go wrong, but to be prepared in advance so to prevent it from happening?
And I look at that as, I'm going to use the term risk mitigation. And it has to do with critical thinking. I'm thinking ahead, and I'm thinking of what if, and what if. AI is just one example that what if my employees or anyone under my supervision believe they might be replaced by AI, and they might fear their future employment, their future financial situation, and so forth. I'm thinking of it again, Ed, as risk mitigation, but I want to think ahead. What if? I want to go through various scenarios. And so by the risk mitigation, I'm planning ahead to mitigate any unforeseen risks as I possibly can. I'm not trying to say that I or anyone are fortune tellers, but we can somewhat reliably predict what could happen, and maybe a low probability of happening, but at least we have thought into it.
Oh, good. Thank you. Ken Lloyd.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with what Ron is saying. And yeah, he used the term critical thinking. And that's really what we have to be doing in every aspect of our work and our lives, because what if is a major question in terms of anything. And the thought is, if something can go wrong, it will, and at the worst possible time. So if you just not to be a pessimist, but to be a realist and say, in the event of any of these unforeseen or foreseen events, what can we do now? And as Ron said, to not just prevent, but mitigate all of this and make sure that we're operating as intelligently and as perceptively as we can and taking decisions now proactively rather than waiting and reactively, particularly on something if we had really, my dad used to call it the what if game. Particularly if we played the what if game, we should be aware and take the steps that we need to deal effectively with what we see in the future or what we predict as the future.
So out there in audience world, as I just mentioned, Ron Cooper, .cooperculture.com, go and check it out. Is based in Eastern Maryland, on the Maryland shore, and many years of being a Top Gun fighter pilot in the U.S. Air Force, particularly during the Vietnam, 300 missions, not a scratch on the plane or him. How about that? Congratulations, and thank you for doing that.
No,
I
thank
feel
you, Ed.
safe. I feel safe just knowing you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I will advance what Ken is saying about being proactive. That is a very, very operative term for me. Critical thinking, being proactive in the cockpit. We have to think ahead. We can't wait until something happens and then wonder, well, what will we do? We can't call a timeout and get a committee together while we're flying. We have to know right now what we're going to do. That's all about being proactive. And but when we instill in others that let's think into and be proactive, and the culture is such that yes, that's what we're about. Others can be proactive in their way of thinking because that is a part of our culture and that's what we do. We are here to stimulate other people's thinking. But Ed, that's a lot of what we are about, and I suspect that's a lot of what Christian is thinking.
So Christian and I had a conversation a couple of months ago when I was putting together this article for the London-based publisher FDI Alliance, Foreign Direct Investments. And I was looking for some information about corporate attitude. And I also got some mobility management information from a European perspective as well for this article. So I'm not putting words into his mouth, but Christian says, this is project management. You know things are going to go wrong, and people have expectations. The transferee family, spouse at the company, the line manager that sent the assignment into action, and of course the assignee. So we're talking about the intersection of geopolitics and risk management and fixing things, because it's about the customer experience that counts. And my title for this series, not only today, but in other programs coming up with different people, different opinions, global business, global talent development, and geopolitics, and how to manage that risk. So I asked Gemini about the current, I would have to read this, the current environment of global risk and remote work. Gemini said, key components of this policy idea, as discussed in my previous writings, is about navigating risk and strategy, exploring how geopolitical risk impacts people's strategy, and what leaders can do in advance to protect and develop talent across borders, addressing the need for businesses to adapt core values to resonate with international partners and employees. Sounds like a no-brainer, doesn't it, Ron?
Well, it does to a degree. And I will tell you that in the context of my perception of geopolitics, yes, we need to be aware of politics. But I will tell you, Ed, my perception is our elected officials don't necessarily think the way the four of us do. I make that as a very broad brush statement. I am working with people in various countries, and I will frequently ask them, how is our relationship with your country, us, US, with your country? And it's a very frequent response that, well, those in the elected positions think one way and they do things, and yes, things are highlighted in the news and so forth. However, I think, and then now it comes down to a personal level. And so while there may be some geopolitical differences, of which I'm not discounting, yes, we work within those parameters and so forth, but maybe despite the way elected officials think of each other, can we choose to work together? And that is where I am. Can we choose to work together? And if we develop a workable, coherent relationship, of course we can. So that's a lot of what how I worked through the term of geopolitics.
Well, tonight at 9 o'clock Eastern, 6 p.m. California, President Trump is going to address the nation about the war. Supposedly, that's all he's going to talk about, the war in Iran. We'll see, but that's a public relations stunt, of course, but more than a stunt, frankly, it's really deadly serious at this time. Sometimes I've been waking up the past week wondering if missiles are going to hit downtown San Diego right over there, where the ships are. This is the headquarters of the Pacific Fleet. And let me tell you, the security has been visibly tightened here. Okay, we're going to move on. Mobility and remote work. Discussing global mobility, relocation, and remote work as cross-border assignments shift or pause due to instability out there. So we want to focus on strategies to leverage productivity gains and manage compliance challenges when working with global talent across extreme time zones. And the nonsense, we're not the only country that's going through immigration challenges. Practically every European country is doing the same thing right now. So adapting flexible global mobility programs to attract and retain younger, globally minded talent who are itching to move on. Ken, what do you think about that statement? And then we'll go deeper.
It sounds like it's something that's on my midterm that I have to answer.
200 words or less, Ken.
Sorry?
200 words or less.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I mean, in terms, I would just go, if you will, kind of big picture globally on this, is that, yeah, the world now in terms of what's happening with immigration and what's happening in university and applicants to universities from overseas, all of that is shifting. We see it in the admissions in the UC system, that we have fewer individuals applying from offshore. I think it ties into a lot what Ron was saying in terms of critically thinking about what's going on, looking at it from the what if side, trying to figure out where this is going, because it's going, but where? And we see the changes coming in, and then you add on top of it the impact of AI, and it's a confusing time in which to live. I know that there is an ancient Chinese curse that says, "May you live in interesting times," and that's what we're in. So I think the message for us is to continue to do what Ron is saying, go back to playing the what if game, asking ourselves what if as we approach the decisions and issues in our organizations and frankly in our lives, and trying to build from there and staying in tune with the world as much as we can. Granted, we're getting information now from all over the place, and a lot of it is not accurate. A lot of it is more editorializing than actual news. I mean, I grew up in the era of Walter Cronkite as the most trusted person in America. And now, who do we really trust on the news? We try to just read a lot of different viewpoints, see what's going on. I mean, I'm reading different things. Even today, I saw stuff in the so-called news that was in another aspect of news specifically indicated as being false. So we really have to be very careful in that regard as well, and try to be as critical in our thinking, and try to be as if you will, as insightful and as inquisitive as we can be in approaching these dramatic and compelling changes that are going on. Was that
So-
200 words or did I? Oh, no.
So, Christian, I don't want to put you on the spot here, so I'm not going to. But if I were an executive or an investor in In-N-Out, or an employee who's going to Nashville or someplace else, I'd be really psychologically prepared and feeling safe were you to be the supervisor of my relocation. I don't mean to embarrass you at all, but I think you are. Now, we've known each other a couple of years now, many programs, conversations, and someday we're going to meet in person, I know. But I would trust you, Christian, because of
Thank you.
your attitude and your willingness to call a spade, you know. And
Yeah.
when Joanna and I go to In-N-Out, I order number 2,
Yeah.
and I share my fries with her because she gets the protein burger, which is
Okay. Yeah.
a cheeseburger with a lettuce wrap,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So, and the total is $16 for everything, you know, and it's done
Indeed.
right. So the human touch and psychological safety in the workplace, never mind at the counter, that the food's going to be safe and good.
Yeah.
Almost every time the same quality.
As it should be.
Yeah.
So to adding to what we were just talking about, what Ken was talking about, is also setting the right expectations. So let's say that we as leaders, as the people the project managers, the people in charge of planning for whatever it is, are satisfied with how far we've come. You know, to Ron's point, we've looked at the probabilities, we've been definitely played it through, you know, practiced all these things. We now need to communicate that there is still a level of uncertainty and there is still a level of risk. And to your point about the geopolitics, one of the things I hear about from my colleagues in relocation that have to handle immigration, which I don't, is setting the right expectations, which really revolve around uncertainty. They revolve around, this is what we think will happen. This is what we can do to prevent it. But at the end of the day, in the interesting times that we live in, there is a lot that cannot be prevented or even foreseen when it comes to immigration. Warnings are being given to people. Do not go abroad on vacation because you may not be able to get back into the United States for certain nationals. These are things that I've been hearing about in roundtables and get-togethers with relocation professionals, communicating what we still don't know or what can happen to me is another big part of what we're talking about. Making that realistic. You said call a spade, and yes, I really pride myself in doing that, being a realist and just to say, this is what we're going to do to prevent this and this from happening. This is what we've put in place for you, but there are always risks. There's always uncertainty. And also, there's a big part that you, as the transferring employee, that you have to take care of, that you're the one who has to find friends. You're the one who has to figure out what's best for you. It's your life. It's not my life. I can give you recommendations, but I can't live your life for you. You know, coming in with a customer service, I'm expecting to be coddled and everything has to be taken care of for me. In relocation only works up to a point. And that point isn't all that far in, no matter what you do, because it depends on the individual and it depends on how well they execute the things that they alone can execute.
Therefore, the selection of who you're going to send on assignment,
That's right.
and not just that person, but the spouse or the kids. Talent, this is what Gemini says on this topic, a focus on the human touch, which involves caring for the talent partners accompanying the employee on assignment cross-border, despite a tricky or worrisome environment. Addressing company culture and mental health and psych safety across the borders, integrating cross-cultural training to address nonverbal or cultural communication barriers. Ken, on the show yesterday with Andrea from Bucharest, she got into that topic. Would you like to comment on that from this perspective?
I think it's a question of, is just as Christian is saying, to really heighten the sensitivity that those who are going to other cultures have toward the individuals in that culture, and not just by listening, but by observing, by learning, by trying to understand how they relate to work, how they communicate, how they deal with others, what pitch, tone, eye contact, all of that means, because it's easy for us to come in, as we talked about, ugly Americans, and just talk louder and you're going to do it this way and this is what we want to do. And that's not how it works. It's to have a real sensitivity to those with whom we will be working and living with, and understand that there are separate cultures, and to be able to try to identify and understand and adjust to them, not to come in with a one-size-fits-all approach. And that's a critical aspect for dealing effectively with other people.
So how do you communicate the safety factor, Christian?
You try to explain as best you can and distinguish between what you have put in place, like I said earlier, and what is still uncertain to the extent that you can. The move that I'm in charge of right now, which is a group move to Tennessee, as Ed just alluded to, involves a lot of uncertainty. It involves a lot of what expects us there. How is the culture different from Southern California? And as an organization, we're doing a lot to work with our transferring associates on that uncertainty, to show them what life could be like over there, to make them, to encourage critical thinking. That's one of the things that I've been pretty involved in, to say, hey, you need to ask yourselves, how do you want to live? What is your lifestyle going to be? What are you interested in? And the classic example to illustrate that I use is, are you sure you want to bring your surfboard to the Nashville area? What are you going to do with it? And that's really just it's a symbol, right? It's an indicator of any kind of hobby or lifestyle or things that you're into that doesn't transfer all that easily. Or even if it does, you have to find it. You have to get in contact with the people that do it. If it's a group thing, let's say, I don't know, soccer, pickleball, you name it. You have to restart that in a way. So it's really about showing people that this is something that they have to do still, and it may not immediately work.
Do you hire a coach? Do you have a budget for that kind of thing, or do you short of having a budget, do you do it yourself?
I do this myself. I mean, I don't feel that we, in that sense, need coaches. In-N-Out does have an employee assistance line, like most companies that I've worked for in the United States. So that is available. But other than that, it's a lot of me trying to change the focus, and also some of my leadership trying to change the focus from the data, the home prices, how much are you moving, the numbers, to the more philosophical aspects of feelings and more like Ken's territory than Relo. And there's certainly some influence there, but it is very important for ultimately the goal of what you just talked about, Ed, which is the well-being, psychological well-being of the transferring employee and their family.
In an so Christian, before we get to Ron, to what extent do you get your employees, not the relocation employees, but the employee population, ready to be transferred before they are transferred, meaning they can work on Zoom virtually in Nashville by being in Irvine before they actually move. They establish relationship, they get to know more about the area, and then when an opening occurs, they are already mentally prepared.
That's not something I can talk about in public. I am now employed and I can't just talk as freely as I could before. But we are doing a lot as an organization, and you know that if you've ever been to one of the restaurants, we care deeply for our associates in and out. That's very public knowledge, and we're number 2 in the Glassdoor survey of best places to work in the United States. So we do care very deeply, and you can rest assured that we do whatever is in our power to prepare our relocating associates for the changes that are coming.
Once again, risk management or risk mitigation. Ron?
Yeah, right on. And Ed, you had mentioned a couple minutes ago, trust. You trust Christian after having known him for a couple of years, even though you have not personally met him. But I think trust is involved very deeply with what Christian is saying, that, gosh, for those in the company who are going to be relocated, Christian, can I trust you? They may not verbalize it that way, but really, that is exactly what people are thinking. Can I trust you? One of the aspects of relocation might be Christian asking people, just tell me a little bit about your lifestyle. What is fulfilling to you? And what I know is fulfilling and very satisfying to them is it Christian's view that in the relocated vicinity, can they experience that fulfillment? Or would you say, I just don't think that's the place where you would be totally fulfilled for whatever that reason might be. In the context of trust, President Trump is going to address the nation tonight. And whether you like him, whether you don't like him, there's a matter of trust. Can you trust what he's saying? And people will have varying opinions on that. But in the context of safety, I think every relocated employee wants to feel very, very safe. But what might I be relocated to an environment where my family has put at risk? And that may be a reason to say that, whoa, golly, I am, Christian, I'm not sure I can stay with your company if you're going to relocate me there. But those are some of the factors, in my opinion, that are integrally involved in trust. And it is a matter of psychologically being safe. Can I discuss this very openly with you, Christian, and have a very honest dialogue about this, or might my employment with your company be at risk?
Just to add to that, so Ron, you know me well enough to kind of guess how I would approach this, and you guessed correctly. One thing is different, though. I would always try to find a solution. I would not say you can't do this, or you probably won't find this there. I would let's take the surfboard, for example. If somebody were to come to me and say, well, but I really want to surf, I would point out that the Florida coast isn't that far away. You can go to Destin. There's some of the most beautiful beaches in the United States there. There are ways to do what you want to do. It may not be something that's immediate, but you could also alternatively go and change that over to boating and use lakes. I will always try to find a solution that may not be exactly what you wanted, but that's also a way for you to move forward.
But I think, Christian, that's to your credit. You are going to try to find an amicable solution, knowing what their desired objective is. And that's all a matter of longer term thinking, not just near term, it's long term thinking. And as we are able to think long term, about our thinking ahead, doing that what if analysis, risk mitigation, and so forth, we need to be in tune with those with whom we're working. And when we are congruent with all of that, we're going to have happy employees. Yeah, I'll stay
That's
with you.
right.
Christian, thank you for helping me think through this.
Thank you, Ron.
So, Ken, is this sounding like it's a good topic for the next book?
It sounds like a great topic for a lot
Risk
of.
mitigation.
Yeah, yeah. Can I ask a kind of a sidebar question? Uh, what if well, let me go a different way. Do you talk to any family members prior to a relo, for example, to the spouse? And then the
Yes.
question is, what if the spouse doesn't want to do it? I don't want to relocate, and the other spouse does. Do you get into that? Do you deal with it? What happens in that kind of situation? I'm just curious.
So I haven't had that happen yet. I do work in the HR department, so my thought is that they would probably likely not roll that out and let me see that conflict. But I do definitely always offer, and I've done this before in my work as a relocation consultant or training relocation consultants, always offer to have the significant other on if that's what your transferring employee wants. And within an outs culture, that's something that comes up quite a bit. In fact, half an hour from now, I'm going to have a first meeting with an employee, and it's going to be, the employee doesn't sit that far away from me, but it's going to be on Teams because of the spouse being there. So definitely that's something I always ask about, and if that's what they want, then I'll offer it.
Thank you. Interesting. And that sounds like
Right.
obviously an excellent idea, because we can talk about a great job, and at the same time, how great is it when the person comes home, there's all this tension and angst and disagreement over what we're doing and why am I here and I don't like this place or I don't feel safe. All of that, which can take that ideal job and undercut that person's performance dramatically and quickly.
Yeah. That's right.
So difficult conversations. Ron and I have had this conversation on a talk show recently. Ron, would you like to sum up and talk about, as an exit from the show, do some time, if you don't mind, about that topic again, difficult conversations?
No, I think the difficult conversations are just, do I understand exactly what, and I'm going to put it in the context of the different spouses relocating. One does and the other does not. And so do you take the time to understand the apprehension of each person that, yep, I see the advantage of relocation, and the other person says, oh gosh, I'm totally against this. But it takes some time to understand each person, and then can you get to the core of whatever it is that is the apprehension of the person that does not want to relocate? And is it because of I hate the sight of boxes and the temporary disruption of moving? Is it, well, no, I don't like anything about the part of the country I'm moving to, but I think it's a matter of spending the time, devoting the time to learn. And you're demonstrating that you genuinely care about the people by spending the time to talk with them. And it's very possible you can mitigate any concerns a person has, because their concerns may have been based on misinformation. Mm-hmm. But you have to spend time to talk with a person. And I use the expression frequently, continue to peel back the onion to where you can get to the core, the root of whatever it is their concern is. And you may find out that, well, no, actually, that's totally unfounded. And now we go back to the topic of trust. well, you say that, Christian, but can I trust you that what you're saying? Well, again, and if you're with a person who's demonstrating a matter of distrust, well, here's the source of the information. Why don't you look at it and let's get back together and review this together. And so that is a matter of cooperatively working together, but that demonstrates that Christian cares, and people want to know that you care about me.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. It's very kind what you're saying, Ron. I really appreciate it. One of the things that I really point out, because frankly, I'm proud of it, is that I have relocated myself several times. I relocated as a child, as a 9-year-old from Germany to Switzerland. So I know what it can be like for a child. And then I relocated during my college days for a year to the UK. And after college, and only a short period of working, of being a professional in Switzerland, I relocated to California. So I often lay that out there for people to know I've been through this, not exactly what you're going through. And of course, I don't necessarily know your family situation and your biography, but I can relate at a pretty deep and pretty emotional level to some of the concerns that you have. And why do I share this? Because Ron, exactly right, because it creates trust. It creates trust, and it makes the discussion so much easier.
Dr. Ken Lloyd, would you like to give us a prescription?
A prescription? Yes. Take 3 of these and call me in a week if it doesn't go away. Yeah, the prescription is just as Ron and Christian are saying. And I hear a lot of the word we in there more than I, which I think really helps. It's not as a manipulative technique, but rather as a genuine way of communicating with people and knowing I'm with you, I'm on your team. I'm not dictating anything. We can work this out and make this positive and productive. And then, as both Ron and Christian have said, the element of trust is there. And we can talk about trust to ad infinitum. It's displaying it, it's acting in trustworthy ways, and truly engaging in behaviors that build trust with others. And again, if we're talking about it and not showing it, it's even worse. So look at the behaviors that both Ron and Christian have talked about, the actions that they've taken, and building trust at the core of all of this to truly make it work is that critical element. And again, it's a lot more than words.
A bit of news as we come to a close here. Calendar note, April 29, long time from now. April 29 is going to be a special broadcast. And so, Christian, if you can, mark your calendar. I'm going to send you an invite.
Okay.
And Philip Berry is going to be our lead speaker, but we have some really interesting people joining us, including Ron Cooper and Joseph McGuire from Dublin, and from London, Andrew Elliman, who has just published a book about his climbing Mount Everest twice and then trying to swim the English Channel. And so the theme of this particular show is branding and what does it mean to the person. So in other words, personal brand as well as professional brand. So I've asked a few others, including Andrea and Chris Exline and London-based Heather, to join us, and also some people from within the relocation industry, but that's still pending. So that's going to be quite a show, I believe. April 29. Let's see, what time does it start here? 8 a.m. California time.
Okay, noted.
All right. And you'll all get notices about this. Meanwhile, it's a long month. April Fool's Day is here. And for those, all of you out there, happy Easter. Peace be with you. Thank you for being on this show. I love it.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ed.
Thank you,
Great
Ed,
to see all of
Christian,
you.
Ken.
See you. Thank
Great
you.
to
see you.
And happy
Thanks for sharing your
Passover.
ideas. It's great.
Thank you.
Be well all.
Cheers.
Happy
Cheers.
holiday.
Bye.
Happy holiday.
Thank you.